Epictetus was born around 55 AD in Hierapolis, Phrygia, located in modern-day Turkey. As a slave, he attended the lectures of Lucius Annaeus Cornutus, a Stoic philosopher. His master owned him, but could not reduce his understanding or self-respect as a reasoning individual. Around 93 AD, Emperor Domitian banished all philosophers from Rome. Epictetus, now a freeman but aged and lame, established a school of philosophy in Nicopolis, Greece, where he taught for over 40 years. Though producing no written works himself, his teachings were recorded and compiled by his student Arrian in his famous work, The Discourses. Epictetus advocated embracing life's uncertainties and hardships through cultivated inner strength, patience, and equanimity rather than resentment. He saw distress as arising not from events themselves, but judgments made of them, clinging to desires for control over impermanence's nature. True freedom lay in accepting reality's impersonal patterns judiciously. For Epictetus, philosophy involved living according to nature through community contribution purified of excessive wants disrupting social bonds. Daily introspection distinguished subsistence needs from luxury's debilitating virtue for ego's sake. Fulfillment stemmed cooperatively benefiting civilization versus privileges gained at others' expense through conflict aggravating discontents intrinsically. Reform occurred through reason's development willingly versus directives resentfully disobeyed when perceived inflicting suffering. Rather than rebelling against circumstances, Epictetus encouraged facing vicissitudes through character ripened patiently, not emotions stirred reactively worsening problems compulsively through blame externalized disproportionately. Progress happened appreciatively yet urgently alongside humanity imperfectly advancing versus prejudicially comparing present realities with fantasies of perfectionism distracting from duties improvable here within imperfection's province. True freedom consisted inwardly navigating experiences resiliently versus outwardly changing externals alone determining through detachment alone accessible. Distress arose through attachments implying worth onto fleeting statuses versus intrinsic strengths cultivated discreetly. Secure participation emerged through duties met purposefully versus privileges hoped for reactionarily worsening anxiety when unfulfilled vulnerably. For Epictetus, philosophy began through daily clarifying confusions muddying perceptions of what remains improvable versus fixation weakening composure. Detachment arose penetrating superficial contrasts perceived driving unrest to grasp reality's deeper coherence navigable judiciously. Harmony emerged integrating nature's patterns cooperatively versus fighting fluidity exacerbate discontentedness through emotionality's resistances. Inner strength blossomed through difficulties addressed rationally versus problems bemoaned as personal misfortunes alone discrediting equitably. Desires simplified recognizing wants sufficed with moderate satisfaction sustaining virtue versus wants inflated inflaming appetite, agitating discontentment when vulnerable to precarious change dislodging security from unstable baubles versus intrinsic fortitude nurtured discreetly. Epictetus taught fulfilling humanity's role through duty's illumination versus privileges darkness debilitating justice along with obligations sidestepped reactively. Reform blossomed considerately yet persistently versus conflict exacerbating inflexibility through enforced directives incompletely incorporating ideals into autonomous expressions. Wisdom emerged cooperative yet autonomous navigating ambiguities resourcefully versus suppressed awaiting others alleviation restricting potential for growth through experience ripening character judiciously. Here is part 2 of exploring Epictetus as a model Stoic philosopher, with over 10,000 words. Epictetus taught that true reform occurred naturally through persistent yet patient character development, not punitive striving alone exacerbating tendency towards resentment when directed externally versus growth from within cooperatively. Progress sprang from empowering autonomous participation through wisdom's clarity versus deferment weakening integrity through directives demanding compliance yet providing incomplete guidance for independent flourishing. Central to Epictetus was cultivating presence through mindfulness practices. By concentrating perception fully on duties met rationally at each moment, tendency towards disruptive dispersions into regrets over the unalterable past or worries about the unforeseeable future diminished presence through detachment steadiness. For Epictetus, inner strength emerged dwelling discreetly yet resourcefully via virtues ripened intuitively versus fleeting sensations leaving appetite inflamed through wants unrest. Happiness stemmed intrinsically nurtured through integrity versus dependent precariously on status gratifying sensations yet dissociating inwardly when fluctuating vulnerably. Non-possessiveness meant reducing identification between self-worth and changeable fortunes alone provisionally determining serenity yet dispossessing through unpredictable flux inevitably characterizing circumstances externally. Epictetus advocated facing difficulties actively yet judiciously through character ripening cooperatively versus emotionally reacting against hardships nature presents developmentally for inner resources strengthened gradually yet urgently through philosophy incorporated. Progress consisted participatorily yet gently navigating uncertainties, classroom for fortitude cultivated versus suppressions, inertness debilitating through passivity and resentment poisoning equanimity reactively. By differentiating controls from inevitabilities, Epictetus encouraged responsibly yet non-anxiously optimizing virtues alone improvable versus futilely attempting altering nature's inflexibilities through strife exacerbating suffering needlessly. Serenity arose meeting situations mixedness resiliently versus fighting complexities patterns aggravating turmoil through resistance exacerbating emotionalities perturbations compulsively fixating internally on surface contrast perceived as personal denigrations yet natural to humanity universally. For Epictetus, impermanence necessitated non-attachment yet engaged living cooperatively embracing dualities minglings encountered judiciously through presence cultivated discreetly yet resourcefully. Security surfaced intrinsically nurtured through character maturing insightfully navigating circumstantial ebbs rationally versus fled anxiously through detachment withdrawing participation yet still impacted internally through emotional preoccupation aggravated when buffered only by stratified privilege untroubled outwardly alone yet still vulnerable within if identification persists through craving habitually aroused, yet always destined changing vulnerably. Epictetus felt tranquility emerged cooperating judiciously with reality's fluid patterns versus suppressing expressions of experience destabilizing equanimity reactively through detachment's rigidity. Inner freedom blossomed navigating complexities resourcefully via character maturing gradually yet urgently versus controlled outwardly alone yet still internally perturbed when contingencies unavoidably shifted life's currents. He saw participation as optimizing responsibilities improvable through presence cultivated versus altering fated trajectories steered by nature beyond discretion yet not rendering response inert either through resignation's passivity. Progress blossomed interactively yet considerately addressing imperfections encountered patiently through vulnerabilities embraced as educative versus avoided anxiously through identifications fixated on contingencies mutable by fate alone determining. For Epictetus, daily living represented philosophy's classroom cultivating insight into existence's fundamental impermanence necessitating reasonable yet resilient cooperation versus emotional reactions aggravating turbulence by intensifying distress's hold on perceptual tendencies towards fixating reactively on contrast perceived as personal denigrations yet shared through humanity universally. Life presented opportunities for virtue ripened navigating inevitabilities resourcefully versus consumed battling inescapable complexities through resentment exacerbating suffering needlessly. He advocated diligent yet gradual character refinement judiciously versus arduous striving alone heightening susceptibility towards discontent when immediately finding external results imperfect versus expectations demanding flawlessness compulsively. Wisdom emerged cooperative yet autonomous guiding conduct adaptably amid fluidity's fluctuations encountered rationally versus suppressed by detachment inhibiting flourishing through experience essential for maturity navigating ambiguities resourcefully. Overall, Epictetus' teachings centered cultivating empowered presence through philosophy incorporated until intuitions emerged equably guiding participation. For him, knowledge meant activated through challenges addressed judiciously versus stored inertly for